Part 13. At the beginning, I gave the future empress her death. I became stronger because I was stupid. Author, Len Mian Buletin Leng. Chapter 121. As soon as this title came out, Zhang Luoxin felt dizzy, and countless illusions emerged in her mind. Endless memories poured out like a tide, poured into her mind like a torrent, and filled every inch of her sea of consciousness. She saw herself snuggling in the arms of her father and mother when she was a child, smiling. She saw herself sitting in a carriage, listening to the noise of the wind and grass outside. She saw herself standing in front of the army, heroic, wielding a sword to repel the enemy. She saw countless people looking up at her with awe and worship. She also saw her father died unjustly in prison, and she was almost killed by poisoned wine. The memories spread out in front of her eyes like a scroll, and then disappeared quickly. Zhang Luoxin's long eyelashes trembled slightly, and tears streaked across the corners of her eyes. These memories clearly belonged to her, but she felt particularly strange at this time. Deep in her mind, there seemed to be a voice that kept telling her to forget her past identity, forget everything in the past, and start a new life again. Zhang Luoxin stood there in a daze, with a huge wave in her heart. Because she suddenly felt a strange power in her body, a power that made her difficult to suppress and even unable to control herself. And she also felt a burning sensation in her lower abdomen, as if some strange pattern was slowly being drawn. What on earth happened? Zhang Luoxin frowned slightly. She wanted to check it out, but she was still on the city wall and couldn't do it at all. She tried to suppress the distracting thoughts in her heart and forced herself to calm down. Finally, the picture flashing in her mind was completely frozen. A golden dragon robe covered the noble and upright back, standing on the top of the sky, overlooking all living beings. At that moment, Zhang Luoxin felt that she had become small and humble, like an ant, humble and weak. He was the nine heavens, and she was an ant. Destined to crawl at his feet, surrender, worship. Zhang Luoxin slowly looked at Qin Mu, and her beautiful eyes flashed with struggle and confusion. The master she called just now was naturally not sincere, but just to stabilize the other party and save those northern soldiers. But now, Zhang Luoxin was in a struggle and confusion. She suddenly found that Qin Mu actually brought her a sense of closeness, as if he had a very close relationship with her. What is going on? Zhang Luoxin whispered, frowning more and more deeply. She felt as if she had lost something very important. This feeling made Zhang Luoxin very irritable, and even felt scared, afraid that she would never find it back. No, I am still me, no one can change me. Zhang Luoxin shook her head and put the chaotic thoughts in her mind behind her. When she looked at Qin Mu again, her eyes became firm and cold again. She would not give in. Zhang Luoxin blinked slightly. There was confusion and obsession in those beautiful eyes, but more of it was a strong hatred. Hatred for Qin Mu. But she concealed it all. Zhang Luoxin lowered her head slightly, covering her complex expression, and whispered, "Master." The second master finished speaking, but there was no strange change just now. Zhang Luoxin breathed a sigh of relief and relaxed. She felt as if she had walked through the gates of hell, exhausted, sweat oozing from her forehead, and her shoulders swayed slightly, showing the fierce battle in her heart. Qin Mu had been watching the changes in Zhang Luoxin's expression with interest, and did not speak out or interrupt her thoughts. As expected of the system's recognized Empress of Destiny, her willpower was indeed extraordinary. In just a moment, she recovered from the influence of the demon clan mark, regained control of herself, and remained sober. If it were an ordinary person, even if they knew the so-called secret, they would probably have collapsed long ago and become a puppet of the demon clan mark. Xuanhuan was a vivid example. If Zhang Luoxin had not suffered such a great blow, I am afraid that this demon mark would not be so easy to use. It seems that we need to add more fuel to the fire. Qin Mu murmured in his heart, revealing a pensive look. He let go of his hand and threw Zhang Luoshan aside. Zhang Luoshan fell to the ground, her pretty face was as pale as paper, and 5 clear purple handprints appeared on her snow-white neck. She raised her head and looked at Qin Mu with difficulty, her eyes full of resentment. This dog tyrant really doesn't know how to cherish women. But Zhang Luoshan didn't care about the pain at this time, and hurriedly got up and walked to the city wall. Looking at the less than 20,000 northern soldiers left, his eyes showed a trace of sadness. Hundreds of thousands of troops, but now there are less than 20,000 left. Zhang Luoshan's heart was bleeding. These are the elite northern soldiers left by her father. Now, hundreds of thousands of them died in an instant. How could she not be sad and angry? Zhang Luoshan turned his head and looked at Qin Mu, and said in a trembling voice, "Master, Master, I have surrendered, can you let these soldiers from the northern territory live?" "Of course." Qin Mu raised his lips and said lightly. Hearing his answer, Zhang Luoshan's eyes suddenly turned red, and he was filled with joy. Finally, the lives of these soldiers from the northern territory were saved. Although the northern territory suffered heavy losses this time, at least there is still hope. "Come here, all of you." Zhang Luoshan shouted down, his eyes full of tenderness. Hearing Zhang Luoshan's words, the remaining less than 20,000 soldiers were stunned at first, and then their eyes burst into brilliant light, and they rushed over like a swarm of bees. "I pay my respects to your highness." 20,000 soldiers from the northern territory knelt on one knee on the ground. This was just a remnant of defeated soldiers, but it still shook the world with its majestic momentum. Zhang Luoshan felt warm in her heart, but pretended to be majestic on the surface. "Get up." She waved her hand and continued, "You all leave quickly, return to the northern territory, and never step out of the northern territory again." "This." The soldiers from the northern territory looked at each other, all hesitant. "What? Do you want to disobey orders?" Zhang Luoshan's eyebrows were slightly raised, and his eyes were sharp. "I dare not." The soldiers from the northern territory shook their heads hurriedly. Then they stood up with red eyes and evacuated quickly. However, during the evacuation, they still looked back frequently, obviously with great reluctance. Although they lost this battle, they never regretted it. They only hated themselves for being useless, failing to avenge the king of Zhenbei, and failing to protect his highness. Zhang Luoshan stood on the city wall, staring at the backs of the soldiers from the northern border who were gradually walking away, her beautiful eyes slightly moist, and her heart was full of mixed feelings. "They are walking too slowly like this, why don't I send them off?" At this time, an indifferent voice suddenly sounded. Zhang Luoshan was shocked all over, turned around suddenly, and saw Qin Mu walking slowly. "You." Zhang Luoshan's pupils shrank, and a terrible guess flashed through her mind. "You, what do you want to do?" Her body softened, and she fell to the ground, her pretty face full of fear. The next moment, Qin Mu stretched out his right hand, and a huge sword surrounded by golden light suddenly flew out of the void and hovered in his palm. Rumble. Instantly, a cloud of black clouds suddenly gathered, dyeing the sky black, and lightning flashed. Crack. A ferocious lightning snake slithered through the dark clouds, exuding a breath of destruction. Qin Mu's eyes were calm, and he raised his left hand and gently slashed it downward. Instantly, a huge and boundless terrifying pressure descended. And the golden blade light fell with the thunder, and struck the retreating northern army. Swish. No. Zhang Luoshan screamed, her body trembled, and her beautiful eyes were full of despair and fear. The following words are not counted. "At the beginning, I gave the future empress her death. I became stronger because I was stupid." Author, Len Mian Buletin Leng. Chapter 122. Ah! In just a moment, countless screams rang out. The 20,000 Northern Territory soldiers could not resist the attack of the Golden Blade Light, and suffered heavy casualties in an instant. The Golden Blade Light swept across, and wherever it passed, no matter what strength the soldiers were, they were all cut off, and the Golden Blade Light could not stay for a moment. It seemed that it was not cutting people, but fruits and vegetables. The Golden Thunder was like a natural disaster, sweeping away everything around. Soon, in front of the entire city wall, there were no living creatures except for a pile of corpses. Before the blade light dissipated, the last two surviving Northern Territory generals were also killed by the blade light. At this point, hundreds of thousands of Northern Territory troops, except Zhang Luoshan, were all killed. For a time, the sky was dim, the moon was covered and the stars were hidden, as if they were unwilling to see this tragic scene in the world. On the tower, Zhang Luoshan stood there in a daze, tears welling up in her eyes, staring at the scene of the piled-up corpses for a long time without any reaction. She didn't know how to describe her current mood. Sadness, anger, despair, all kinds of emotions gathered in her chest, making her almost suffocate. Every corpse here is a loyal warrior who has fought for the North for many years. Some of them have even reached the age of retirement, but they still resolutely followed her to Chang'an this time. But now, they have all fallen, and even their bones cannot be found. After a long time, Zhang Luoshan woke up from despair, her eyes were red, her voice was choked, with helplessness and sadness, desolate and mournful. You! How could you be so cruel? Zhang Luoshan stared at Qin Mu, her beautiful eyes were filled with tears, her heart was in pain, and her teeth were creaking. Qin Mu smiled slightly and said calmly, "Since you have chosen to rebel, you should be prepared to die. Besides, all these people died because of you, what does it have to do with me?" Qin Mu's eyes were calm, as if he had just crushed a few ants, without any emotional fluctuations. You bastard! Zhang Luoshan's fingertips trembled slightly, her pretty face was as pale as paper, and a trace of glaring scarlet blood flowed from the corner of her mouth in a hurry. She clenched her fists tightly, and her white fingertips sank deep into the flesh. You clearly promised me, and I have already surrendered to you, why do you still regret it, why? Zhang Luoshan lowered her head slightly, as if talking to herself, her voice was choked and trembling, and the despair and grief in her heart were simply indescribable. She had thought that she would be tortured and even deprived of the right to live. But the only thing she didn't think was that Qin Mu would actually go back on his word. This person really has no trust at all, and he is not worthy of being an emperor at all. The more Zhang Luoshan thought about it, the more she felt wronged. She leaned against the cold and hard wall. She put her legs together, wrapped her arms around her knees, curled up into a small ball, buried her head in it, and sobbed silently. Her tears fell like broken pearls, mixed with blood from the corners of her mouth, dripped into the mud under her feet, and bloomed into a bunch of bright red plum blossoms. Qin Mu saw this, and a trace of mockery appeared at the corner of his mouth. He walked in front of Zhang Luoshan, looked down at her from a high position, and said lightly, "Do you think they can avoid death by returning to the north? You are so naive and cute." As soon as these words came out, Zhang Luoshan's body trembled, raised her head and looked at Qin Mu, with tears in her eyes, pitiful. Qin Mu stood with his hands behind his back, looking arrogant, and continued, "After today's events are thoroughly spread, I don't have to do anything. Naturally, countless people will be willing to do it for me, send troops to the northern border to attack them, and clean up the door for me to show their loyalty. Not only will they not be rescued, but they will also be implicated because of rebellion, and their families will be destroyed. By then, the entire northern border will be reduced to ruins, turned into scorched earth, with corpses everywhere, and no grass will grow. You said, if all this is not caused by you, then who is it?" Hearing this, Zhang Luoshan's pretty face turned pale, Her body swayed slightly, and she almost fell to the ground. Too many things happened today, and she really didn't think of this level. Now that Qin Mu reminded her, Zhang Luoshan realized the seriousness of the problem. As the saying goes, a defeat is like a mountain collapsing. At the beginning, the northern cavalry was unstoppable and swept all the way. Now it is just the opposite. The north has been defeated and the situation is over. Once this matter spreads, it will surely cause an uproar and plunge the entire north into turmoil. At that time, some counties that are eager to make meritorious deeds or want to make meritorious deeds will spontaneously organize to attack the north. When she thought of that picture, Zhang Luoshan's pretty face turned pale. Since ancient times, the winner is the king and the loser is the enemy. The north has fallen to this point, which will inevitably attract more hostility. Please, please. Zhang Luoshan looked at Qin Mu with tears in her eyes, opened her pink lips, and squeezed out a slight whimper from her throat, full of pleading. At this moment, Zhang Luoshan has completely figured it out. If she wants to save the north now, she must please the man in front of her. Otherwise, what awaits the north is only destruction. Is this how you beg me? Qin Mu glanced at her and said indifferently. Hearing this, Zhang Luoshan's body stiffened slightly, and a deep sense of shame and anger appeared in her eyes. But for the sake of the hundreds of millions of people in the north. Zhang Luoshan lowered her head, her jade neck was slender and weak, and her delicate body wrapped in a plain skirt had graceful and attractive curves. But at this moment, this delicate body was trembling slightly, showing the owner's inner panic and entanglement. Suddenly, Zhang Luoshan mustered up the courage to raise her head. A delicate jade face was close at hand, with extremely delicate features, delicate skin, and beautiful and moving. Especially at this time, her pretty face was slightly red and her eyes were wet, which made her look pitiful and even more pitiful. Master, please, forgive them. After a long silence, Zhang Luoshan finally spoke in humiliation. Even though she hated Qin Mu in her heart, she still gave up all her dignity and pride and begged humbly. She knew that if Qin Mu refused to let go, all the people in the northern border would be buried with him. Didn't the king of Zhenbei teach you to kneel when talking to me? Qin Mu said lightly with a blank expression. Zhang Luoshan heard this, her body trembled, she pursed her cherry red lips tightly, and endless anger rose in her heart. This tyrant! He dared to mention his father. Zhang Luoshan gritted her teeth, her body tensed, and she wanted to fight to the death immediately. But, she finally bent her knees slowly knelt in front of Qin Mu, her tense body relaxed, and her forehead touched the ground. Please, please forgive me, Master, Luoer is willing to serve you, just ask you to spare the people of the north. Zhang Luoshan's voice was a little hoarse, tears flashed on her beautiful face, she was about to cry, and she was pitiful. Qin Mu looked down at Zhang Luoshan, who was kneeling at his feet and trembling all over, and said lightly. It depends on your performance. Zhang Luoshan's heart trembled, and her body trembled again. But, she didn't say anything in the end, just put her head on the floor, knelt quietly, and didn't dare to move. Qin Mu stopped talking and stood up and walked away. Zhang Luoshan raised her head slightly, watching Qin Mu's back as he left. Her beautiful eyes flickered with struggle and hesitation, but she finally gritted her teeth, stood up, and staggered to follow him. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. At the beginning, I gave the future empress her death. I became stronger because I was stupid. Author, Len Mian Buletin Leng. Chapter 123. The next day, before dawn. The horizon in the east had just shown a hint of white, and a strong smell of blood floated in the air. Outside Chang'an City, blood flowed like a river, broken limbs and bones piled up, almost forming a small stream, extending from far away. On the edge of the battlefield, a group of soldiers in silver armor were cleaning the battlefield. This battle to defend the city has come to an end. The three parties of the north, Kangyu and Qianyuan, sent a total of nearly 3 million soldiers, and there were countless generals, worshippers, and counselors. But in the end, they were all buried under Chang'an city, leaving no one alive. The cruelty of this battle is breathtaking. And the most shocking thing is that in this war, a total of 9 saints were slaughtered. If such news were spread, it would be enough to shock Dakan and even the entire Tianlan domain. You know, every saint is a top existence, with unfathomable power, and can destroy mountains and fill the sea, and move rivers and streams with a wave of their hands. But even so, 9 saints still fell here, and no one would believe it if it was spread out. This battle is too fierce. Fortunately, we still have His Majesty. A soldier of the Qin dynasty said with emotion, his eyes full of reverence, as if he recalled the extremely tragic fighting scene last night. Yes. Without His Majesty, this battle would never be won, another soldier agreed. This time, our Qin dynasty has vented its anger. I really hope that this situation will continue, otherwise I will be crazy. Many soldiers talked about it, their eyes full of expectation, hoping that Qin Mu could lead them to glory. At this time, they have completely changed their impression of their own majesty, and no longer think that their own majesty is a foolish and incompetent person. Even countless residents of Chang'an City, after seeing Qin Mu's demeanor yesterday, directly worshipped him as a true god and regarded him as their only belief. Qin Mu's image in Chang'an City has changed. However, Your Majesty is really cruel. He killed them all directly without leaving a single prisoner, said another soldier. This is inevitable. Whoever asked these people to rebel should be killed. The soldier who spoke earlier shook his head and said, I heard that the Northern Territory Zhang Luoshan is still kneeling in front of Your Majesty's bedroom, begging Your Majesty to show mercy, another soldier suddenly said. Really? Yesterday, Your Majesty killed all the Northern Territory soldiers in front of her. Now she must be regretting it. If I had known this would happen, why did I do it in the first place? Everyone sighed. And at this time, outside Vyang Palace, Zhang Luoshan knelt on the ground, his forehead touching the ground, his hands clenched into fists, and his knuckles turned white. A drop of crystal tears slid down silently. The strange looks from the maids around her made her feel very uncomfortable, as if she was stripped naked and thrown on the street for people to admire. She had never dreamed that such a thing would happen to her. But despite her inner resistance, she had no choice for the sake of the people of the Northern Territory. Master, please have mercy and let the people of the Northern Territory go. Zhang Luoshan spoke with difficulty, feeling humiliated and desperate. She had been kneeling here for a whole night since she followed Qin Mu back to the palace. But Qin Mu did not summon her, and she knelt there all the time, not daring to move. Zhang Luoshan knew in her heart that the tyrant was deliberately humiliating her. Otherwise, with the lustful look of the tyrant, how could he have endured for so long? Zhang Luoshan still had a little confidence in her appearance. The morning sun shone on her delicate and white skin, as if covered with a layer of hazy golden gauze, giving her a different charm. Her black hair was scattered and drooping, making her face even whiter and more transparent. She lowered her head, and when her weak body knelt on the ground, her slender legs overlapped naturally, making her buttocks more plump and round, showing a perfect arc. Her figure was elegant and seductive, making people daydream and tempting. It was a pity that such a picture was destined not to appear in the eyes of any man. Only Qin Mu could see it. At this time, Qin Mu was sitting on the soft couch in Vyang Palace drinking tea, looking at Zhang Luoshan outside the palace gate with indifference. Your Majesty, have a grape. At this time, Yun Yanner pinched a purple grape with her bare hands, gently sent it to Qin Mu's mouth, and said with a smile. Qin Mu opened his mouth and ate it. When the sweet grapes entered his throat, Qin Mu's expression was slightly relieved, revealing a smile, and nodded and praised, "Yanner still feeds sweeter grapes." Yun Yanner playfully stuck out her tongue, and a blush appeared on her pretty face. "Your Majesty, the war is over now. What are you going to do?" Yun Yanner was about to ask Qin Mu about his plan, when she suddenly trembled and cried out. She bit her teeth lightly, her neck was pink, and her eyes were rippling. Qin Mu raised his eyebrows and looked at her with a smile. "What's wrong?" Her body was limp, leaning against Qin Mu's arms, her two jade hands tightly grasping the hem of her embroidered skirt, her beautiful eyes blurred. "Nothing, Your Majesty, I just suddenly felt a little uncomfortable." Yun Yanner's tone was numb, her pretty face was flushed, her voice was charming and seductive, full of endless temptation. "Oh? Uncomfortable? Let me help you check." Qin Mu smiled slightly, hugged Yun Yanner and went into the inner room. When Zhang Luoshan was about to ask for mercy again, she suddenly frowned. She moved her ears and listened to the voice coming from the hall. Her face instantly turned red, her heart beat like a deer, and she was extremely panicked. She wanted to find a crack in the ground to crawl into. She couldn't help but spit in her heart. He started doing that at dawn, he really deserves to be a tyrant. Zhang Luoshan's cheeks were hot and she was ashamed to death. But thinking this in her heart, Zhang Luoshan continued to kneel on the ground, not daring to move a step. She could only silently endure those voices, and at the same time prayed in her heart that Qin Mu could end it as soon as possible. Unfortunately, this situation lasted for a long time. Zhang Luoshan was upset. But that voice seemed to be deliberately targeting her, and it drilled into her mind like a magic sound. Zhang Luoshan bit her silver teeth secretly, and her pretty face was red. She kept telling herself that all this was just an illusion, but her body honestly expressed its true thoughts. She could only suppress this strange feeling forcibly and sigh in her heart. This licentious and incompetent emperor. It was not until noon that Qin Mu slowly walked out of the palace. At this time, Zhang Luoshan still remained in a kneeling position, motionless. Qin Mu stood beside Zhang Luoshan, looking down at her, with a playful smile on his lips. He slowly leaned down, stretched out his finger, and lifted Zhang Luoshan's pointed chin. The four eyes met, and their noses touched. A light and elegant fragrance came to his nose, lingering around the nose, refreshing his heart. At the beginning, I gave the future empress her death. I became stronger because I was stupid. Author, Len Mian Buletin Leng. Chapter 124. Qin Mu's eyes were as dark as the sea, profound and unpredictable. He sniffed the scent and looked at the delicate face in front of him unscrupulously. The girl's skin is crystal clear, her eyebrows are curved, her nose is straight, her cherry mouth is slightly pursed, and her beautiful phoenix eyes contain a touch of stubbornness and shyness. Although his clothes were messy, he still couldn't hide his amazing cold temperament. Zhang Luoshan raised his head and looked at Qin Mu's handsome face so close at hand. An almost instinctive fear flashed through his beautiful eyes, and his delicate body couldn't help but tremble a few times, trying to avoid it. But the next moment, she seemed to think of something, and she bit her red lips with her teeth, overcoming this fear. Qin Mu was slightly startled, then raised the corner of his mouth slightly, and a hint of teasing flashed in his eyes. "Afraid?" he asked softly. Zhang Luoshan bit her lip tightly and said nothing. "Het." Qin Mu smiled, as if he had seen through her heart. "It seems that even the majestic flower of the north is sometimes afraid." Hearing this, Zhang Luoshan gritted her teeth tighter and her delicate body trembled slightly. "If you wanted to humiliate me, you already did it." She was silent for a long time, then lightly opened her red lips and said, "If you want to do anything to me next, please do it. I will never resist. I just ask you to let the people in the north go." After Zhang Luoshan finished speaking, he closed his eyes and waited for Qin Mu's next torture. She knew that from today on, she would become a tool for Qin Mu to vent his desires. And it's the kind that never stops. She wasn't even sure how long she could hold out. After all, that fool spends all morning at a time, who can stand this? Zhang Luoshan felt a little frightened when he thought of the sounds coming from the hall just now. It's terrible. Is she really not going to break? Zhang Luoshan waited nervously for a long time, but did not feel any other movements from Qin Mu. She opened her eyes slightly and asked doubtfully, "Aren't you going to humiliate me?" She felt a little disappointed, but she couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. Qin Mu looked at Zhang Luoshan expressionlessly, then suddenly shook his head and sneered. "Zhang Luoshan, you are a little too confident. There are 3,000 beauties in my harem, and there are some who are better than you in terms of figure and appearance. Do you really think that I have a crush on you?" Hearing this, Zhang Luoshan's body trembled suddenly, and a trace of disbelief flashed in his eyes. Originally, she thought Qin Mu wanted to lust after her body, so he used that method to humiliate her and make her give in. But now after hearing these words, Zhang Luoshan's heart suddenly felt bitter. It turned out that he didn't take himself seriously at all. Zhang Luoshan felt that his pride and dignity had been insulted like never before. "Then why are you?" Zhang Luoshan couldn't help blurting out, but felt a little embarrassed. However, Qin Mu stood up and left directly, without even listening to her next words. Zhang Luoshan had a blank look on his face, the unfinished words were suppressed in his mouth, and he stared blankly at the stalwart figure gradually disappearing from sight. It wasn't until Qin Mu left that she slowly came back to her senses. At this time, she only felt that the whole world had changed. It was no longer as vivid and bright as before. Instead, there was only dejection, decadence, and deep sadness. If even her last beauty has lost its effect, then what capital does she have to ask her master to let the north go? Zhang Luoshan slowly lowered his head and knelt on the ground again. Not far away, Qin Mu looked at the scene with a hint of amusement in his eyes. Of course what he just said was all false. How could he not be interested in Zhang Luoshan? He wished he could turn the other person into a cream puff right now. But there's no rush yet. Now Zhang Luoshan has experienced many blows, and her state of mind has reached a very fragile point. It is a good time for the demon mark to completely destroy her Taoist heart. If you miss this opportunity, it will be very difficult to seek such an opportunity again. Of course, he could also just force the bow right now, but that would most likely cause a backlash and make Zhang Luoshan's Taoist heart even firmer in the future. When a person loses everything, potential and power beyond his own limits often burst out. This is especially true for the Empress of Luck, who has a firm Taoist heart like Zhang Luoshan. Go Jian, the mortal king of Yu, could still endure hardships on a daily basis. If Zhang Luoshan was given enough breathing space, she would surely regain her strength. Qin Mu wants to completely destroy Zhang Luoshan's belief, make him completely surrender to him, and slowly taste it. Otherwise, wouldn't his work have been in vain? Qin Mu took a deep look at Zhang Luoshan, then turned and left. He has other things to do. Although the battle in Chang'an City was over, there was still a lot of mess to deal with after the war. State Councillor Du Yulan led troops to attack the Xuanhuan dynasty, but there has been no news yet. The whereabouts of the Empress of Kangyu dynasty, Xie Hong'ai, are also unknown, and Xie Qingxiu is suspected of being exposed. There are also Jiangnan County, Zhangzhou County, and Nanling County. These three counties took refuge in the north without a fight. This matter also needs an explanation. These matters need to be handled by Qin Mu personally. However, Qin Mu was not worried about the Xuanhuan dynasty. Du Yulan was a military general and had good ability in commanding the army. In addition, he sent 2 more saint puppets, and the soldiers and horses of the Xuanhuan dynasty could not stop them at all. Qin Mu was more worried about the Kangyu dynasty. The Empress Ye Hong'ai was meticulous and did things almost flawlessly. She might have suspected Xuanhuan now. Otherwise, there was no reason for her to let Xuanhuan stay in the mansion for such an important matter as invading Dakan. Qin Mu thought about it while walking towards the direction of the palace. He was going to take a nap first. Going to court was impossible. Qin Mu would never take the initiative to go to court in his life. These trivial matters could be left to Li Hanshan, and he was only responsible for being a tyrant. Qin Mu returned to the palace. Xuanhuan was dragging her tired body to dress herself. After seeing Qin Mu, she didn't care about continuing to dress, nor did she care about the spring light that was leaking, and she knelt down to greet him, "Your Majesty." Qin Mu glanced at Xuanhuan and smiled lightly, "Don't wear it." Xuanhuan's cheeks became more and more red, and she was happy and a little scared in her heart. She really couldn't bear it. "Your Majesty, how about I call a few more?" At the same time, Jiangnan County. The news of the defeat of the Northern Territory has not yet been delivered. The former Mr. Li, who was the first to defect to the Northern Territory, was sitting in his newly bought mansion, hugging his beautiful young wife who had just been married, looking forward to a bright future. At the beginning, I gave the future empress her death. I became stronger because I was stupid. Author, Len Mian Bulletin Leng. Chapter 125. Madam, it won't be long before we can go to Beijing and enjoy the blessings. Li Feiyang said with a smile, his heart full of joy. He felt that he was a rare talent. When entering Jiangnan County from the north, others were still hesitant. He was the first to stand up and resolutely announced that he would follow. This wise decision brought him direct attention from the top management of the Northern Territory, and even gave him the opportunity to meet the Lord of the Northern Territory, Zhang Luoshan. This is definitely a great honor for Jiangnan County now. When Li Feiyang thought about the day he met Zhang Luoshan, he couldn't help but feel excited. That was the pinnacle moment of his life. This should be the best decision he has ever made in his life, bar none. Otherwise, how could we have achieved our current status and reputation? Although the Li family was originally a famous family in Jiangnan County, he also relied on his own strength to make a name for himself in Jiangnan County. But that's just a small amount of fame. It is far from what it is now. Wherever he goes, he is followed by thousands of people and stars hold the moon in his arms. Even the governor and generals of Jiangnan County rushed to please him. He is now a man of the hour in Jiangnan County, holding great power. Whether it is wealth, power, or beauty, he has everything at his fingertips. And most importantly, he also got Zhang Luoshan's attention. As long as he performs better in the future, he might be able to win the favor of the Northern Flower, and even take the Northern Flower home. Zhang Luoshan's beautiful figure suddenly appeared in his mind. Zhang Luoshan. That was the goddess in the hearts of young men throughout the Qin dynasty, the goddess that all young heroes dreamed of. If he married Zhang Luoshan, wouldn't he be able to reach a higher peak in life? Thinking of this, Li Feiyang trembled all over, and his heart was extremely excited. He squinted his eyes and had a silly smile on his lips, as if he had already begun to dream about the arrival of that beautiful day. "Husband, I always feel uneasy in my heart." The little wife frowned slightly and spoke softly. Li Feiyang came back to his senses and laughed loudly, "Why are you worried? That faint king will definitely be defeated. It is estimated that Chang'an City is now firmly surrounded by the troops of Kangyu and Qianyuan in the north. Furthermore, it is said that Qianyuan and Kangyu also sent out the saint ancestor. That Hunjun will not be able to hold on for long. As long as the Northern Territory can replace Tachin, then your husband and I will be able to follow the merits of the dragon. It will be no problem to be promoted to a higher rank, or even be granted the title of king with a different surname." Li Feiyang raised his head and said with great confidence, "Well, I believe in my husband." When Xuanhuan came in, his little wife lay softly on Li Feiyang's chest, her face full of happiness. Li Fiyang laughed, put his arms around her slender waist, put his mouth close to her ear, and said ambiguously, "When you enter Beijing, my husband will definitely hold a grand wedding for you. Until then, no matter how good my husband is, he will love you. I will obey my husband's arrangements in everything." The little wife also laughed, looking at Li Fiyang charmingly, her words filled with unabashed admiration. Li Fiyang laughed loudly, with a high-spirited look on his face. But at this moment, rapid footsteps suddenly sounded outside the room. "Lord Qi, something bad is going to happen," a man gasped and stumbled in, shouting in horror. "What are you yelling for? Get out," Li Fiyang frowned and scolded. "Lord Qi, the Northern Territory has been defeated," the man turned pale with fear and shouted in a panic. Hearing this, both Li Fiyang and his little wife's expressions changed drastically. "How is it possible?" Li Fiyang's eyes widened and he roared angrily, "How could the North be defeated? Sir, really?" The man was crying and hesitated to speak. He didn't know how to tell Li Fiyang the specific situation. "Because this thing is too absurd and weird." "Say it," Li Fiyang grabbed the man's collar and roared viciously. "Isn't Chang'an City surrounded by the three major forces of Kangyu, Xuanhuan, and Beijing? How could it be defeated?" The man was so frightened that he collapsed to the ground, trembling all over, and stammered, "Back to my lord, I don't know the specific situation. I only know that the Northern Army was defeated, with heavy casualties. No one in the million-strong army returned, even Zhang Luoshan, the lord of the Northern Army, was suppressed by the emperor." Bedroom. The man swallowed and continued. "Kangyu and Qianyuan were also wiped out. It is said, that even the 9 saint ancestors died outside Chang'an City." Boom. Like a thunderbolt from the clear sky. Li Fiyang's whole body stiffened. His pupils suddenly contracted, and a thick haze of death instantly enveloped his body, making his hair stand on end. He was stunned for a moment, then suddenly jumped up and yelled hysterically, "Impossible! You are talking nonsense. This is absolutely impossible." The man was immediately frightened and knelt on the ground trembling, "Sir, this is true, this is true. As soon as I received the news, my subordinates rushed back immediately and did not dare to stay for a moment." "You lied." Li Fiyang looked like he was crazy and shouted, "You must be lying about the military situation in order to shake the morale of the army." The man's face turned pale instantly. He didn't dare to wear such a big hat. He was about to say something. But Li Fiyang suddenly attacked, grabbed his neck and shouted, "Speak! Who sent you? If you don't tell me, I will kill you." The man was pinched and his face turned red. He struggled desperately, but he couldn't get rid of it at all. He said with difficulty, "Sir, please spare my life. This news is absolutely true. I dare not hide anything." "Shut up. Those who spread false military intelligence will be killed without mercy." Li Fiyang was furious, his eyes were bloodshot, and he gritted his teeth, like a madman. Bang! He suddenly exerted force and broke the man's neck directly, killing him on the spot. Blood splattered and splashed all over Li Fiyang's face. Impossible. Absolutely impossible. How could the North lose? Li Fiyang's face was covered with blood. He shook his head and muttered to himself, unwilling to accept this fact at all. He thought his dream was about to come true. But he didn't expect that this would be the beginning of a nightmare. The charming little wife was also frightened. She covered her cherry lips and her pretty face turned pale. "Husband! Shut up! Keep this matter in your heart and don't let it out." Li Fiyang snorted coldly, flicked his sleeves and turned to leave the room. He wanted to investigate it himself. He didn't believe it was true. It must be that damned subordinate who betrayed him and deliberately spread false information. The North Territory could not fail at all. And what about the 9 saints who all died in Chang'an City? How ridiculous! Do you know what a saint is? Li Fiyang strode out and soon came to the front hall. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. At the beginning, I gave the future empress her death. I became stronger because I was stupid. Author, Len Mian Buletin Leng. Chapter 126. At this time, the place was already full of various Yamen soldiers. They saluted one after another, extremely respectful. Sir, you are here. Everyone greeted in unison. Li Fiyang looked gloomy, glanced around, and asked in a cold voice, what is the situation in Jiangnan County now? Everyone looked at each other, all smiling. Sir, now Jiangnan County is of course decorated with lights and gongs and drums, just waiting for the northern border to overthrow the Qin dynasty, so that we can change the dynasty and welcome the new master. One of the officials said excitedly. Yes, it is estimated that Chang'an City has now been broken by Xuanhuan, Kangyu, and the northern border. It is completely finished. Another general said with a smile. Another person followed suit, saying with a face full of longing. When the North returns triumphantly, we, as the first county city to surrender, must have made great contributions. At that time, we will have endless wealth and glory. We can have as many women as we want. All this is thanks to our Lord's wisdom and bravery. He made the most correct choice in the shortest time. Of course, Lord is a great hero of his generation. He can win the battle thousands of miles away. The officials talked about it, with flattery on their faces. Hearing these praises, Li Fiyang's face eased a little, but it was still gloomy and terrible. He said coldly, don't relax your vigilance, continue to monitor, and if you find any army approaching Jiangnan County, you must report to me immediately. Yes. I will obey the Lord's order. Yes. The officials agreed and hurriedly dispersed. Afterwards, Li Fiyang also led dozens of guards, driving magic weapons, and rushed to the city wall of Jiangnan County. Soon, everyone arrived at the city gate. At this time, the walls of Jiangnan County were already crowded with soldiers, civilians, and ordinary monks. They were densely packed, with flags flying and huge crowds of people. Everyone was looking forward to the legendary Northern Army returning triumphantly. The arrival of Chen Fiyang made the atmosphere at this moment boil to the peak. His name almost became the second focus of discussion in the entire city. The first focus was of course Zhang Luoshan. As the first person to surrender to the northern border on behalf of Jiangnan County, Li Fiyang's courage was simply admirable. Some people even said that Chen Fiyang had been received by Zhang Luoshan, the lord of the northern border, and was promised a heavy reward. Such a young talent is destined to have an extraordinary future. Everyone, look, this is my Jiangnan County Li Gongzi, Li Fiyang. On the wall, the soldiers in charge of guarding shouted, attracting cheers from the people, which was very lively. Li Fiyang raised his head and chest slightly, standing proudly on the top of the tall tower, looking at the dark crowd below the city wall, with a hint of enjoyment on his face. The tsunami-like cheers and the pleasure of being the center of attention calmed his violent mood a little. With this progress, even if the uprising in the northern border fails, nothing will happen to him, Li Fiyang. After all, he is now a celebrity in Jiangnan County and is supported by so many people. If the tyrant dares to touch him, it will surely cause dissatisfaction among the people of Jiangnan County. Can the tyrant kill all the people in Jiangnan County? Moreover, after Chang'an Town suppresses the northern border, it will surely suffer heavy losses and will have no time to take care of other things. Maybe he can also call on these people in Jiangnan County to split the territory and establish themselves as kings in the name of revenge for the northern border. Even with his own troops, he will ascend the throne and become an emperor. No matter what, the advantage is mine. Li Feiyang's mind turned rapidly, his mood was agitated, he took a deep breath, and stepped down the city wall. Everyone. Li Feiyang walked to the center of the square and bowed to all directions. Instantly, the cheers became more intense, and countless people rushed to applaud, the sound shook the sky. Mr. Li is mighty. Mr. Li is domineering. All right. Li Feiyang raised his hand to signal. The noise gradually subsided. He looked around and said loudly. Everyone, the tyrant is incompetent and cruel, and has killed loyal people. The world has been devastated. Not only that, he is also licentious and has lost his humanity. He is simply a violent and evil beast. He doesn't deserve to be the emperor. The Iron Cavalry in the north is trampling down Chang'an City. As the people of my great Qin, you should respond to the call and kill the tyrant. Li Feiyang's voice spread to all directions, deafening and sending a message, making everyone's heart tremble, as if thunder had exploded. Kill the tyrant. As soon as Li Feiyang finished speaking, cheers exploded inside and outside the city wall. Let's fight the tyrant together. Kill the tyrant. Countless people shouted in unison, their blood boiling, wishing they could rush out of the city right now and fight to the death with the tyrant. Okay. I, Li Feiyang, will definitely lead you to achieve great achievements and become famous. Continue the 10,000 years of national prosperity for my great Qin. Li Feiyang spoke passionately, spitting and speaking generously. It seems that he has already seen the scene of ascending the throne, commanding all the ministers, and wearing a yellow robe. Boom! 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 Suddenly, a low and loud sound of war drums resounded through the sky, shaking the city gate tower violently, spreading all over the fields, and shocking people's hearts. In the distance, smoke and dust rolled, and a black torrent surged, covering the sky, like a dark cloud covering the sky and the earth. Above it, there is a giant flying boat that blocks out the sun, hovering in the air, like a mountain, blocking the sun's rays and turning the sky black. Hiss is this, the Xiantian flying boat of the north. The North Army is back. They are back. Great. The Zhenbei army has returned triumphantly. Haha, the North Army really didn't let us down. They won after all. At this moment, everyone cheered wildly under the tower, their faces flushed, and their expressions were ecstatic. Especially Li Feiyang, who was even more excited and trembling all over, clenching his fists, and looking expectant. Ha ha ha. Finally back. I knew that the North would never fail. Li Feiyang laughed. This Xiantian flying boat is the symbol of the North. Its return means that the North has won. However, when the Xiantian flying boat slowly approached, Li Feiyang's brows furrowed deeper, and the smile on his face gradually faded. The flying boat was indeed the same one. Li Feiyang thought he was not mistaken because he had once been on a flying boat. But the flag on the flying boat seemed a little wrong. Li Feiyang narrowed his eyes and looked carefully. On the flag fluttering in the wind, there were two characters written in a majestic and powerful style. Dakin. At the beginning, I gave the future empress her death. I became stronger because I was stupid. Author, Len Mian Buletin Leng. Chapter 127. Dakin. At this moment, Li Feiyang's pupils suddenly shrank. His heart twitched violently and almost jumped out of his throat. Dakin? Really Dakin? Li Feiyang's pupils shrank sharply, and he was horrified. His originally ecstatic face froze instantly, turning into horror, panic, and despair. This is a chill from the bottom of his heart. Why did the flag of Dakin appear on the Xiantian flying boat? I don't believe it. Did the North really lose? No, it's impossible. There must be something wrong. Li Fiyang shook his head desperately, his face twisted, and his eyes filled with intense panic. Although deep in his heart, he had accepted the fact that the North had failed, he still had illusions. Unfortunately, this last illusion was shattered. The flag of Dakan on the Xiantian flying boat clearly told him that the news said by his subordinates was true. Did the North really lose? This thought floated in Li Fiyang's mind, entangled him like a devil, and could not be dispelled. Especially when the flag of the Qin dynasty became clearer and clearer, he felt a pain in his heart and almost fainted. Mr. Li? What's wrong with you? Seeing Li Fiyang suddenly stunned, the deputy general standing next to him couldn't help but ask. Ah. Oh, nothing, I'm fine. Li Fiyang came back to his senses and forced a smile that was uglier than crying. He took a deep breath, forced himself to calm down, and said, "You greet me here first, I have something to deal with, I will be back soon." "Yes, Mr. Li." The deputy general bowed and saluted immediately after hearing this. Li Fiyang no longer hesitated, turned around and left immediately, running quickly towards his mansion. Before things really happened, he imagined it very beautifully. He even thought of separatism and ascending the throne to become emperor. But when he really saw the Xiantian flying boat and the flag of the Qin dynasty, Li Fiyang found that he was scared again. In fact, he was the first to surrender to the North because he was too cowardly, not because he was wise and brave as people said. That was all lies. He was afraid of death. He still had a good time to enjoy, and his newly married young wife had not yet lost her virginity. He didn't want to die here. Li Fiyang staggered, sweat on his forehead, and he was extremely terrified. He wanted to take his wealth and his wives away from Jiangnan County and find a place that the Qin dynasty would never find. Enjoying a good life was the kingly way. However, before he walked 100 meters, a strong murderous aura rushed down from the sky, turning into a monstrous murderous intent, instantly locking onto Li Fiyang. Li Fiyang's body shook violently, and his face changed drastically. The murderous intent was too strong, like a huge hammer hitting his soul, making him feel suffocated and terrified. He looked up at the void. In an instant, he was stunned. In the air, dozens of men in golden armor stood. They were all wearing golden armor, and their whole bodies revealed an extremely fierce aura. Especially the man on the left, he was burly, with muscular body, a face like steel, and a bright eye, like an ancient beast, which made people palpitate and tremble. Looking at these golden armored soldiers, Li Fiyang shivered all over, his face full of fear. Because of the way these soldiers were dressed, they were the imperial guards of the Qin dynasty, who were specially used to protect the safety of the royal family and only obeyed the command of the Qin dynasty. Li Fiyang never dreamed that he would meet the imperial guards of the Qin dynasty here. This is just like running into the king of hell. Who are you? Why are you stopping me? Li Fiyang swallowed his saliva and asked, pretending not to know him. He tried his best to suppress his fear and did not dare to reveal his identity. Li Fiyang from Jiangnan County defected to the northern border of the rebellious army. He should be executed and his 9 clansmen should be exterminated. The cold and low voice of the burly man on the left slowly resounded over Jiangnan County. Instantly, the whole city was in an uproar. Both the common people and the powerful monks were shocked and confused. Li Fiyang trembled all over when he heard this, and his face was as pale as paper. Exterminate my 9 clansmen. He had never expected that the emperor of the Great Qin would be so straightforward and would take action against him without saying a word. The Great Qin Royal Guards. At this time, a deputy general finally recognized these golden armored warriors, and was so scared that his heart and gallbladder broke, and he screamed. Wow! As soon as these words came out, an uproar immediately set off, and the whole city was boiling instantly. What? The people on the Xuanhuan flying boat are not soldiers from the Northern Territory, but the royal guards. What does this mean? Did the Northern Territory lose? How could this happen? Ah! Inside and outside Xuanhuan County, countless people were terrified and talked about it, and everyone's face showed astonishment and confusion. It's over. Looking at the royal guards floating in the air, Li Feiyang's lips trembled. I am the commander of the guards of the Great Qin Palace, Huo Kang. In accordance with the order of His Majesty, I have specially led the royal guards to wipe out the traitors. At this time, the burly man spoke again. The words were cold and without any emotion. As his voice resounded around, countless warriors in golden armor jumped off the Xuanhuan flying boat. Rumble. Bursts of muffled thunder sounded. Millions of imperial guards walked on the clouds, crushing the four directions like a golden torrent. In an instant, the huge Xuanhuan County was tightly blocked. Countless civilians and monks fled in panic. Some timid civilians even hid in the corners and trembled. Looking at this group of murderous imperial guards, Li Feiyang felt a chill in his heart. He felt a piercing chill running from the soles of his feet into his spine, making him shiver, and hurriedly said at the fastest speed in his life. Brother Huo Kang. You misunderstood. This has nothing to do with me. It was those northern legions. They forced me to rebel and surrender. Don't get me wrong. I was wronged, and I never thought of betraying the Qin. Li Feiyang argued anxiously. But Huo Kang didn't listen to him at all. He walked straight towards Li Feiyang, and his deep voice spread in all directions. All traitors, men will be killed without mercy, and women will be sent to the palace as slaves. From now on, Xuanhuan County will be reduced to ruins, leaving no one alive. His voice was sonorous and powerful, revealing a murderous intent, shaking the world and setting off the whole place. Boom! As soon as these words came out, the whole place was shocked, and countless people stared with their eyes wide open in horror, constantly gasping. Reduced to ruins, leaving no one alive. Many monks were also trembling in their hearts, their faces full of horror. That tyrant is too cruel and cruel. This is a prosperous and wealthy city, and he actually said that it would be reduced to ruins. This kind of crazy behavior is simply unheard of. What on earth is this tyrant thinking? How dare he give such an order? It's over. It's over. I told you long ago that the North would lose, but you just didn't believe it. Now the North is destroyed and we have to die too. How dare the tyrant? Countless people cried out in grief, their eyes red. Kill the traitors. Huo Kang roared, waved his hand, and in an instant, a spear flashed out of thin air and was held in his palm. It's over. Li Feiyang's face was ashen, and his heart was like falling into an ice cellar. Just then, a figure rushed over, and an old voice roared, "Don't hurt my son." Li Feiyang's eyes suddenly lit up, and he looked back and shouted, "Dad! Save me!" But the figure had just appeared and had not landed yet, but was stabbed to death by Huo Kang's spear, nailed directly to the ground, and blood flowed all over the ground. Li Feiyang. At the beginning, I gave the future empress her death. I became stronger because I was stupid. Author, Len Mian Buletin Leng. Chapter 128. People around. They were all dumbfounded. The dignified head of the Li Mansion, a prominent figure in Xuanhuan County, a Yuanshen realm monk, was as weak as a chicken in front of Huo Kang, and was stabbed to death with a spear? The commander of the royal guards is so terrifying. Father! Li Feiyang was shocked and angry, shouting hysterically. Then the next moment, he couldn't scream anymore. Huo Kang's right arm suddenly shook, and a spear came through the air. Li Feiyang's chest was instantly pierced, and blood flowed rapidly. You. Li Fiyang opened his mouth, but was speechless. All he could see was that his two eyeballs were bulging and covered with bloodshot eyes. He was obviously greatly shocked. Bang! He fell heavily to the ground, his vitality quickly dissipated, and he fell completely. This scene was deeply imprinted in the minds of everyone present and will be unforgettable for a long time. Li Fiyang colluded with the rebels and attempted rebellion. According to the laws of the Qin dynasty, he should kill the 9 tribes as a warning to others. Huo Kang glanced at Li Fiyang's body indifferently, took back his spear, and spoke indifferently. Then, he turned to look at the generals and soldiers on the city wall. If you surrender without fighting when faced with the rebels in the north, you will also face a dead end. Kill them immediately. As soon as he finished speaking, Huo Kang waved his changa and swept towards the generals. Gen. For a moment, terrifying pressure filled the void, covering all the generals and ordinary soldiers. The generals and soldiers were immediately stunned, their faces turned pale, and they fell limply to the ground. However, there was no time for any resistance from them. The sharp Changji cut through the void, bringing up a sharp arc of light. The next moment, all the generals and soldiers were nailed to the city wall. Blood splattered and stained the sky. Kill with one blow, no sloppiness. At this moment, there were screams of despair on the city wall. Although several of the generals fought hard, the gap in strength was too great. In the blink of an eye, they were all killed by Huo Kang like he was chopping melons and vegetables. Seeing this scene, the eyes of many people present were astonished and their faces were full of shock. Commander Huo, please spare your life. We are forced to do so. Yes. We made the mistake because we were deceived by Li Fiyang. I beg Commander Huo to have mercy and let me find a way to survive. I beg Commander Huo to show mercy. Suddenly, there was a wailing on the city wall, and countless generals and soldiers knelt on the ground, crying bitterly. Huo Kang looked indifferently and ignored these people. He looked around the entire city and his eyes suddenly condensed. Starting today, our imperial guards of the Qin dynasty will take over Jiangnan County and liquidate the traitors. Boom! As Huo Kang's words fell, group after group of imperial guards swarmed in, occupying the entire city in an instant and hunting down all the traitors. The entire Jiangnan County, inside and outside, suddenly turned into purgatory. It's over. It's over. I, Jiangnan County, am done. We all must die. Please don't kill me. I was wrong. Desperate screams and wails filled the entire Jiangnan County, plunging the entire city into a state of great panic. Countless people, monks, and soldiers fled outside in an attempt to avoid trial. But all this is of no avail. Under Huo Kang's strong suppression, the entire Jiangnan County was strictly controlled, and no one could escape. Even some aristocratic families were suppressed and killed without missing a single one. In just half a day, the originally bustling Jiangnan County turned into a river of blood, a scene of hell on earth. The men were shot without mercy, while the women were taken into the flying boat. After a selection process by the beautiful ladies of the Yeding Palace, the most beautiful ones were sent to the palace, while the others with average beauty would be directly reduced to official prostitutes. For a time, the whole Jiangnan County was filled with cries that were extremely tragic. And the other side. In the newly bought mansion by Li Fiyang, his little wife who had just entered the house was shivering in the corner. Huo Kang strode in. He glanced at it and asked lightly, "Are you Li Fiyang Xena's wife and concubine?" The woman trembled when she heard the words. She raised her head, her face full of panic, and tears rolled down her beautiful eyes. "My name is Xuanhuan, my lord." Her appearance was quite good, and the pear blossoms with rain at the moment were so charming that she quickly attracted Huo Kang's attention. However, Huo Kang didn't pay too much attention. He just glanced briefly, nodded and said, "She's pretty and has a wife as a bonus. I'm sure His Majesty will like it." Hearing these words, Xuanhuan's delicate body trembled slightly, as if she thought of some terrible encounter, and tears filled her beautiful eyes even more, but soon, she gritted her teeth to hold back, lowered her eyebrows and said, "Thank you for the compliment, sir." Huokang waved his hand and said, "Take it away. Remember, as long as you serve your majesty well, it is not impossible to fly up a branch and become a phoenix." "Yes." Xuanhuan was stunned when she heard this, and then she seemed to suddenly realize something. She responded obediently, and then left with the maid from Yeding Palace beside her. And Huokang also left, continuing to do his best to find the best woman for His Majesty. And this situation not only happened in Jiangnan County, but also in Zhangzhou County, Nanling County, and other cities. Anyone who has joined or supported the rebels in the north will be ruthlessly liquidated at this moment. No one and no family can escape the disaster. All of them are happy to win the 9 clans elimination game. The whole 3 counties are turbulent, a bloody storm, like the end of the world. At the same time, Dakan, Vyang Palace. Qin Mu rests his head on Yunyan's snow-white jade legs, and the one who is massaging her feet is the fallen princess Lu Ningxuang, and the 2 women Hongxiu and Hongluan are rubbing her shoulders and back behind her. "Princess Lu, you worked so hard just now, are you still thinking about revenge?" Qin Mu gently kicked Lu Ningxuang's plumpness with his foot and asked with a smile. Lu Ningxuang's pretty face showed a hint of shyness, and then she glared at Qin Mu fiercely and snorted. "It's good that you know. I advise you not to lose your vigilance against me, otherwise I will kill you one day." When Lu Ningxuang said this, a cold light flashed in her eyes. "Okay, I look forward to that day," Qin Mu replied with a smile, not afraid of Lu Ningxuang's threat at all. On the contrary, he thought this was quite interesting. He didn't even plant the demon mark on Lu Ningxuang. Because Qin Mu didn't worry that Lu Ningxuang would turn over his palm. After all, not every woman is like Zhang Luoshan. Seeing this, Lu Ningxuang was helpless. She knew that she couldn't beat Qin Mu at all, so she had to sigh. Then she bit her silver teeth secretly, pressed hard with her bare hands, and vented all her dissatisfaction and anger on Qin Mu's legs. At this time, Qin Mu closed his eyes slightly, and his mind established a connection with the 2 saint puppets far away in the Xuanhuan dynasty. He had finished what he should be busy with, and it was time to see what the situation was over there. Could it be that the Xuanhuan dynasty has been destroyed? Qin Mu's mind moved slightly, and his will instantly traveled through endless distances and arrived at the Xuanhuan dynasty. The next moment, a picture came into view. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. At the beginning, I gave the future empress her death. I became stronger because I was stupid. Author, Leng Mian Buletin Leng. Chapter 129. Kill. Protect your majesty. Protect Xuanhuan. Come on. With shouts of killing shaking the sky, hundreds of thousands of armored soldiers charged like a tide, letting out desperate screams. Just because they are in front of them. There were millions of Daqin troops wearing heavy black armor, holding spears and charging forward without fear. At the very back of the army, there was a towering high platform, with an old man covered in blood standing on it with his hands behind his hands, looking at the enemy solemnly. His white hair was messy and flying, and his sharp eyes revealed a terrifying and murderous aura. It was Du Yulin, the great master of the Qin dynasty. Different from his gentle side in the court, on the battlefield, he was as terrifying as a bloodthirsty Shura, and his every move was filled with evil aura. Your Majesty's judgment is indeed correct. The Xuanhuan army is empty, which is a good time for invasion. It's just, Your Majesty, You sent 2 senior saints to assist the old minister, so what are you going to do? Your Majesty, do you have another plan? National Preceptor Du Yulin looked at the enemy troops in the distance and murmured to himself, his eyes fixed on the front line, his brows full of sorrow, and his eyes flashing with complex expressions. At this time, he already knew that His Majesty sent 2 saints to assist him secretly. When Du Yulin was moved in his heart, he could not help but feel worried. Of course, I was more moved. Worry is only human nature. Du Yulin believes that since His Majesty dares to send 2 saints out when Chang'an City is in danger, he must have greater confidence to resist foreign enemies. And what he has to do now is to live up to His Majesty's expectations and completely capture the Xuanhuan dynasty. Du Yulin's face was solemn, his eyes were deep, and his whole person exuded a chill. Your Majesty, I will definitely capture Xuanhuan for you. Rumble. There was a continuous loud noise, and the charge of hundreds of thousands of Qin troops was like thunder, deafening, as if the entire sky was shaking. Kill. Accompanied by a loud shout, the armies of both sides finally engaged in hand-to-hand combat and clashed together, starting a fierce fight. Swords clashed, flesh and blood flew everywhere, and corpses were everywhere. Destroy Xuanhuan. The great Qin cavalry roared and roared wildly, the sound tore through the sky, bringing up billowing smoke and dust, sweeping across the 8 wastelands and Liuhe. Blood splattered, blood flowers burst out, and shrill roars echoed throughout the vast land. Whether in terms of quantity or strength, the Qin army was far ahead. The Xuanhuan army that was killed was retreating steadily and was completely defeated. It was impossible to stop the pace of the Qin cavalry. Damn it, defend yourself. Seeing this scene, the expressions of many Xuanhuan generals suddenly changed drastically, and they roared angrily, their voices restless. These hundreds of thousands of troops are the last force to defend the Xuanhuan imperial capital. If they are lost here, then the Xuanhuan imperial capital will no longer have the troops to defend it. Once the capital of Emperor Xuanhuan falls, the entire Qin dynasty will definitely be able to occupy the entire Xuanhuan as quickly as possible and annex it. This was a devastating blow to the Xuanhuan emperor. Thinking of this, the veins on their foreheads throbbed and they almost vomited blood. Damn it, isn't Chang'an City already too busy to take care of itself? Why did it dare to attack our Xuanhuan dynasty? It really caught me off guard. A Xuanhuan veteran who was over 70 years old looked at all this with a gloomy face, and he wanted to cut Du Yulin into pieces immediately. But he did not dare to act rashly and could only command his soldiers to support them hard. After all, the great Qin army led by Du Yulin is too strong. Yes, who says it's not the case? Moreover, Du Yulin, the great Qin state advisor, personally leads the troops, and there are 2 saints standing guard. We can't resist at all. Another veteran echoed with an aggrieved face and red eyes. They all planned to hold a celebration banquet, but they did not expect that what was waiting for them was not the triumphant Xuanhuan army, but the murderous Dakin army. They were completely caught off guard. And the most important thing is that this million-strong Great Qin army is not only led by the Great Qin State Master Du Yulin, but also has 2 saints. And this time happened to be when their Xuanhuan dynasty came out in full force. There was only one sage ancestor in the imperial capital, who was no match at all. He could only mobilize the quasi-emperor soldiers to barely protect their Xuanhuan emperor. If there is no more support, if this continues, the Xuanhuan palace will inevitably be destroyed, and they will not be able to escape the end of their fall. For a moment, everyone was filled with resentment, and they wanted to kill Du Yulin immediately to relieve their hatred. Kill! 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 The shouts of killing shook the sky, the shouts shook the mountains and rivers, and the Qin army surged with momentum. Bloodlight burst out, and a head flew high into the sky. A Xuanhuan officer was beheaded, and his headless body fell to the ground, staining the earth red with blood. Retreat, run for your life. Seeing the increasing casualties of their own soldiers, the soldiers of the Xuanhuan army finally collapsed, discarding their helmets and armor one by one, and fled madly into the distance. Many generals even dropped their weapons and knelt down to beg for mercy. The great Qin cavalry trampled on the Xuanhuan legion, completely destroying their defense line. The flames of war spread, corpses littered the fields, blood dyed the earth red, and broken limbs were scattered everywhere. The strong smell of blood spread everywhere, making people nauseous. A soldier named Xuanhuan fell in a pool of blood, extremely tragic. In the dilapidated city, tragic scenes abound, and screams are heard everywhere. When the generals of the Xuanhuan dynasty saw this, their expressions changed greatly, and their eyelids twitched wildly, revealing strong anger and hatred. But there was nothing they could do. He could only watch helplessly as the great Qin army slaughtered his own men, completely crushing the Xuanhuan army and leaving them without their armor. "No, we can't stand it anymore. Go quickly, leave the green hills behind and don't worry about having no firewood. Don't be reluctant to fight, retreat quickly, otherwise we will all die." Roars roared out from the mouths of the Xuanhuan generals, and then they turned and left without hesitation. At this moment, they no longer cared about the face of the Xuanhuan dynasty and ran away one by one, lest they fall into the Qin cavalry. Ha ha ha, these are the so-called Xuanhuan elites. Seeing the appearance of Xuanhuan's army, Du Yulan, the great Qin state councillor, couldn't help laughing, his eyes sarcastic. A bunch of rubbish, actually trying to annex the Qin? What a wishful thinking. Du Yulan snorted coldly, not hiding the sarcasm in his words. Then he issued another order: "The entire army is pressing forward, and we must capture the Xuanhuan imperial capital before sunset." Promise. On the side, the generals of Great Qin responded and led their armies to press towards the Xuanhuan emperor's capital. The overwhelming evil energy filled the surrounding areas, and the Qin army's momentum was shocking and fierce. Every time they charged, there seemed to be endless wind and thunder, kicking up thousands of feet of dust. The sound was huge and extremely terrifying. At the same time, above the sky, two women with graceful figures and unparalleled majesty stood in the clouds, surrounded by bright rays of light. Their divine power was unpredictable and suppressed everything. Any powerful enemies who dared to attack the Qin army were killed by them before they had a chance to take action. They are like high-ranking judges, escorting the Qin army and crushing all obstacles. It was Qin Mu's two saint puppets. Qin Mu had also observed the scene through their field of vision. "You two, don't stand here doing nothing. Go and see if there are any princesses in the Xuanhuan dynasty, and bring some back to me." Qin Mu ordered calmly. "Yes, master." Upon hearing this, the two puppets immediately bowed respectfully and disappeared into two wisps of light. At the beginning, I gave the future empress her death. I became stronger because I was stupid. Author, Len Mian Buletin Leng. Chapter 130. In the imperial capital of Xuanhuan, corpses lay everywhere, wailing sounds continued, and the dark army of the Qin dynasty was raging. And somewhere in the city, three figures were running away frantically. Two women and one man, both with extraordinary appearance and outstanding temperament. At this time, there was blood at the corners of their mouths, their bodies were covered with scars, and they looked very embarrassed. The man looked back from time to time, looking horrified, as if something extremely terrifying was chasing them behind them. "Second brother, stop looking and leave quickly," a petite woman said anxiously. She was wearing a pink dress and looked pretty, but her face was full of tears now. There was a trace of blood at the corner of her mouth, and her pretty face was pale, adding a bit of pity. The other one is taller, wearing a blue dress, with skin as white as snow, and exquisite facial features, as if he has been banished to the world, giving people a sense of nobility. But her face was now covered with frost, and her eyes shone with a cold light, which was intimidating. How can we run? Even the ancestor holding the quasi-emperor weapon is no match. Where else can we hide now? The man said with a sad face and a trembling tone. Are we going to die here? Woo, I don't want to die yet. The petite woman cried, clutching her clothes tightly with both hands, her eyes red, and her beautiful eyes filled with tears. The woman in the blue dress firmly grabbed the petite woman's arm and said coldly, "If you don't want to die, get out of here quickly. What's the use of crying?" After hearing this, the petite woman stopped crying, raised her head and glanced at the woman in the blue dress, and suddenly did not dare to speak. My ancestor can only barely protect my father now and doesn't care about our life or death at all. The man's eyes were red, his eyes were about to burst, and he was mad with hatred. We are hopeless, do you understand? The words just fell. Suddenly, an extremely terrifying pressure came from the horizon, firmly locking the three of them. Then I saw a white figure slowly approaching from the distance, crushing the void with every step it took, causing ripples in the space, as if a fairy spirit descended from the 9 heavens. What should I do? I'm dead this time. The female devil is chasing me again, the handsome young man said with a look of despair. What should we do? Is this the prince really going to die here today? These three people are none other than Xuanhuan, the 7th princess of the Xuanhuan dynasty, Yi, the 9th princess, and Yingzhi, the 2nd prince. Stop looking and run away. Xuanhuan's pretty face was extremely cold, and she said coldly and hastily. Although the woman in the white dress opposite is very powerful and has the power of a saint, it is impossible for her to defeat her. But she doesn't intend to give up hope, she still has one last chance. Xuanhuan opened her palm and saw a stone covered with mysterious inscriptions in her tender palm. This is a teleportation talisman, a treasure left to her by her father to save her life. It can help her get out of trouble and escape disaster at critical moments. When Yingzhi saw this, his face suddenly showed surprise. So Kame, you still have such a good thing. Why didn't you tell the second brother earlier? Xuanhuan ignored him and poured the spiritual power in her body crazily. She felt a numbness all over her body and beads of sweat oozed from her forehead. Buzz. In an instant, the teleportation talisman shone with dazzling light, and a majestic attraction surged out, pulling the three of them and disappearing in an instant. The woman in white armor arrived in the blink of an eye, standing in the void, her eyes scanning indifferently. You can't escape. She spoke indifferently, her voice calm, as if she was stating a fact. The slender green-white index finger was slightly bent and suddenly popped out. Tisk. In an instant, there was a sudden sound of breaking through the air, and then a harsh scream erupted in the void. This blow actually tore a huge bottomless ravine in the sky, like a crack in the world, exuding terrifying and chaotic fluctuations. Puff. The void shook, and three figures fell out of it, looking extremely embarrassed. They were the 7th princess Xuanhuan and others. Her face was miserable, a trace of red blood spilled from the corner of her mouth, and her entire face looked extremely pale. Ahem, you. The saint puppet looked at the three of them indifferently, pointed at Yingzhi, and said indifferently, Male, if you don't meet the master's requirements, you can die. She lowered her finger and the void froze. A black sword light instantly penetrated Yingzhi's eyebrows. Bang! Yingzhi's eyes widened and blurred, his body became extremely stiff and he fell heavily to the ground, refusing to rest in silence. Second brother. When the 9th princess saw this scene, she was immediately heartbroken, her beautiful eyes filled with tears, and she cried miserably. The saint puppet looked at the two girls and nodded, Female, princess, if she meets the requirements of the master, she can live. Her words were calm and devoid of any emotion. But Xuanhuan and Yi were trembling all over, filled with endless humiliation and fear. They were the most favored princesses of the Xuanhuan dynasty and enjoyed unparalleled treatment. Who dared to bully them like this? But the person in front of them not only dared to bully them, but also killed their relatives in front of them. The saint puppet reached out and grabbed the two women by their collars, and threw them mercilessly to the rear of the Qin army. Then he went to war again. This Xuanhuan catastrophe has just begun. P.S. A few words will not be counted in the word count. There are only 2 chapters, brothers, I will make up for it tomorrow. I went to Shandong today to visit my grandpa. I didn't feel anything in the past few years, but I really feel that I am getting older in recent years. Since my grandmother passed away, my grandfather seemed to have lost his energy and spirit all of a sudden. His steps became slower and slower. He began to use a cane, his back was no longer straight, and his hands began to tremble uncontrollably. Yes, his hands couldn't stop shaking. We helped him clean the yard outside the house. He stood in the main room, holding the door with his hand, and the door was shaking all the time. When I saw this scene, when I suddenly realized something, I was really stunned for a long time. I felt so uncomfortable. In my impression, my grandfather walked in a hurry and his back was straight. When I was sick as a child, he could ride his tricycle and take me across 7 or 8 roads to the clinic for injections, coaxing me that there would be candy after the injection. Now when I think back, I realize that I don't know when it started, and many things have been going on for many years. I gave him my old smartphone and taught him how to unlock it, how to make calls, and how to video chat, just like he taught me how to study when I was a kid. My grandfather was a high school student, which was considered highly educated at that time. He could talk about everything from ancient times to the present, astronomy and geography, and he learned very quickly. So before leaving, I looked at the key novel software on my phone and silently clicked uninstall. If he saw the novel written by his grandson one day, it would be bad.